Hi, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurship by Design with Dr. C. I'm so glad you're here today because we have such an incredible guest with us, Melissa Griffin. Melissa is a medium spiritualist, intuitive, and author of Validation of a Healer. Born and raised in Texas, Melissa shares real-life mystical experiences and events from childhood to adulthood in her book. Her mentor, a famous psychic, helped her explore these encounters and learn valuable lessons. She is passionate about helping people who share similar experiences. Melissa's purpose is to provide hope and healing to the readers. Thank you so much for being here today, Melissa. It is such a pleasure to have you. And I would love for you to just dive into your journey, how you got here today. I know there's been lots of ups and downs, but whatever you feel called to tell us today, and then we'll go a little bit deeper.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And it's been a real pleasure and an honor being invited to your show. How I got here today, it's been a very long journey. From 5 years old, I started picking up on my first spiritual gift of the problems my parents were having at the time. Didn't quite understand it. I was 5 years old. And fast forwarding, I had a lot of premonitions within the family. For example, in my book that I published, I knew my father was going to grow ill even before he became ill. And I remember distinctly having this conversation with my mother in the kitchen. She was, I believe, making dinner. And I explained to her, I said, he's going to grow ill and he's just not going to make it. So I would probably say 6 months later, he did grow ill and the doctors could no longer save him. So he did say his goodbyes for everybody, and it was a very difficult time, but I felt that I was very, a lot of people don't get that chance when they are losing their loved one. And so I try and see it as positively as I can with him saying goodbye to all of us, even though it's a very difficult time. Yeah. But a lot of things that have beyond that, I was having a lot of dreams and they turned into premonitions within the family. And so in other instances, there were spiritual experiences like hauntings that my niece had gone through, and so did my nephew. And in her case, there were children that were haunting her. And so I chose not to be aware of the situation. I didn't want my sister-in-law to explain to me what it was that was going on. I would rather walk in, because I'm a medium. I'm considered a medium. I can pick up spirits. And in her case, when I arrived, I ended up going upstairs and I went into my niece's room and I heard a lot of children whispering. And I heard a very loud swing, like when you're at a playground, a children's playground. And so I explained to them not to be afraid. I wanted them to feel very comfortable around me. Yeah. And so I asked them if they wanted to be crossed the light, and they said yes. So I ended up calling 2 angels to accompany them. I created a white light coming down from the heavens. And so they end up joining the angels and leaving. And I went back downstairs, and that's when I told my niece there were children. She said yes. She verified that, and my sister-in-law was very much in disbelief. One of the things that I had a firsthand experience was that my sister-in-law's mother's brother was murdered. And I had never met him, didn't even know he passed away. And she said, my mother's not eating. She said, we're very concerned here, and she's not answering our phone calls. She's just given up. And so my sister-in-law's sister ends up calling me and telling me, and I said, well, I'm not sure what I can do, but I will do my best. I will reach out to the uncle. And I asked for the uncle's name and how he died. So that same night, I end up calling him, and I hear him, not a man of a lot of words. And then I said, we're having this conversation. He's showing me how he was murdered, very gruesome. And I said, is there anything that you can, you want me to tell your sister? I said, having a very difficult time right now. And so he said, yes, tell her this. She'll know what it means, because we used to tell each other this when we were children. Okay, so I'm jotting it down, I'm writing everything, I didn't want to miss anything. So we conclude our conversation, our spiritual conversation. The next day I called my sister-in-law's sister, tell her this. I said, look, I don't know what this means. This is what he said. She said, okay, thanks. Okay, then I end up, there's a family Christmas party. My sister-in-law's mom's there. She's emotional. She approaches me and says, thank you so much. And I said, you're welcome. I wasn't sure, quite sure. And then that's what she said. Nobody knew that conversation. It was only between my brother and I. That helped me. That helped me live, she said. And she hugged me. And I hugged her back and I said, you're very welcome. She said, you know, I never thought that I was going to be able to get out of it, because she was mourning, and rightfully so. That was her brother. And so I was very, very happy that I was able to help her. So those are the kinds of things that are mentioned in my book. I never studied any of this stuff. I had to figure it out as I went on into my journey, and I am now 52. And so from 5 years old to 52, I've had so many things happen. I even had a spiritual attachment for 2.5 years. And Miss Weber, my mentor, who is helped me with this book that I wrote, she ends up telling me a lot of times what happens, she said, when you're spiritually gifted, you leak energy. And when you leak energy, that's the opportunity for a spirit to eventually become an attachment to you. And at the time I was going through divorce. I was trying to figure out where I was going to live. And I was trying to figure out a lot of things. And I had just started a new job. So I had a full plate on my hands. So I ended up, my mother, she ended up finding somebody who would help me. And it was another healer, and we had to travel to South Texas, where I'm originally from. And so we're sitting there, and I'm hearing a woman, right? He's talking, right? Explaining what to do. And I'm hearing a woman. And I had to, respectfully interrupt him. And I said, I'm hearing a woman, and she's around you. And he's smiling at me. She said, yes, I think I know who you're talking about. That's my wife. She's passed away. And and that explains why she's telling me that she's around you all the time and she has no plans to leave. And then he smiled. He said, yeah, that's her. So he ends up, doing the healing work for 3 days. And so I go back, to my life, and I'm hearing the spirit staticky, the attachment, the male spirit, because it was a male spirit that had attached to me. And that's when I knew that it was, going away, because I was static, kind of like a radio static.
Yeah.
That's what I was hearing. And so I was just very happy because it was making noises, all sorts of, odd hours of the night. Halloween was the worst.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. It was making noises. And then I'm not kidding you, but I would raise the volume on my TV when I was at home at night, and it would start playing this music, this booming music that I didn't quite understand what he was trying. And then he would try to communicate with me, but I was hearing him mumble. And at the time I hadn't practiced the mediumship yet until way later. So yeah, that happened. And so I learned that you need to keep the wall up, and the best way to describe it is when you have children. And unfortunately I don't have children, but I often, use that as an example. When you want to protect your child from any danger or harm, that's the same concept you will use when you come across a spirit. You have to be very strong, and you have to be, you can't allow them, because they will try and run over you. They will try. And a lot of times when they know when you have these gifts, They're just looking for help.
Yeah.
They want somebody to, guide them or answer their questions. And when they know that somebody acknowledges them, that's when they are going to stick around and try these different noises and things like that. But,
yeah, no, I so appreciate you sharing that too, and just the journey that you've been on and having these situations happen at such a young age too. How did you first realize when you had these spiritual gifts, and how did you go about developing them? I know you said you had a mentor and there's other factors, but really, what was that bulk of it?
the bulk of it had to stem from probably when I was maybe 17 or 18, because I started noticing all the way up to probably, no, wait, maybe like maybe 19 or so, 19 or 20.
Yeah.
I started realizing something's going on here. Why am I getting these dreams of my house, my parents' house, these repetitive dreams that just kept going and going and going.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of them came true. And I started noticing that and thought, I just kept moving on with life. And then I started getting these things happen, like when I moved into my first house back in 2014. And that house was haunted, and it was only 2 years old. And so I was the second owner. I saw my first apparition. I saw the first young child. She was a little girl. I could see her. She had little ponytails. And so that's when I had to, at the time, call a paranormal team. And because I didn't understand what was going on. I hadn't crossed any spirits at all. I didn't know how to do that.
Right.
Medium said, I ended up helping the medium. She said, you do it like this, and I listened to her and I helped out. And that's when she told me, you really should explore this further. And so while I was at my house, I was crossing spirits. I mean, they were showing up in large groups of people. At that point, I wanted to go to sleep because
slow down.
I'm like, you got to help me, and sometimes when I would, would politely say, no, I can't right now. I really got to go to work, and but they would come, and if I didn't help them, they would start making noises, but I learned that you have to be, assertive with them. They have to respect your home, because after all, they're coming for the help. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean that they won't get the help, because they will, and they did. So in the instance of for example, a little girl, she was stuck in the area where my other bathroom was, because there was a cool spot. So I ended up crossing her over, and I called the angels, and she has them both. She's holding their hands, and she's illuminated, and I've never seen this before. She's illuminated in like this lime green, and that's how I knew it was her. She turned around to thank me before she left. And I said, you're welcome. So she's leaving, and I didn't tell and I was dating my husband at the time because he was coming over. He knew he was a little girl, and he knew, where that cold spot was. I didn't tell him that I crossed over. I wanted to see for myself, okay, if he's still going to feel her. He ends up visiting me one day, and I don't say anything. And then that's when he finally brings it up and says, you know what? I don't feel that cold spot. That little girl isn't there anymore. And that's when I told him what I did. So that's how I learned to cross spirits. And sometimes they'll follow me. Like I was mentioning earlier, the experience when my husband and I went to a restaurant when there's a ghost town surrounded by the restaurant. I end up being approached by a woman after we parked the car. Keep in mind, I had never been to that restaurant. I was just curious. I had heard about it, about this ghost town. I didn't know if it was haunted or not. Right. We get there. She's trying to get my attention. And we're walking, right? And I tell him, there's a woman trying to get my attention. And I say, okay. We go in, and I explained to the young lady before we placed our order, because we didn't know what kind of food they serve. So she was explaining that to me. And then that's when I told her, I said, I just got approached. I said, I'm a medium, and I got approached by this woman. She asked what side of the property, and I said, the left side. And she said, oh yes, she died in my arms. And I said, I'm hearing her gasp for air. She said, yes, she was gasping for air before she died. And she said, you want to learn about the property? There's a plaque on the right side here. And I said, no, that's okay. I'd like to go ahead and just kind of venture off into the property just to see what else, I pick up. And I ended up seeing that little girl. The interesting part about the little girl is there was a swing, an actual swing there on the property there was no air. The air was still. And when I acknowledged her, like a rush of air went through, and my husband noticed that. He could feel her as well. And he even pointed how tall she was. And I told who I was, that I wasn't there to hurt her. And so she was curious. It's very so, but it was a beautiful property. It made you go back in time as far as the Western era.
Yeah.
That's how it was. And so I end up, even before going and seeing the plaque, because I ended up reading it afterwards, even before that, I end up having this vision of the property, of how it was and how hard they worked during that time, because a lot of different people were coming and going there. It was an area, ranchers and people like that. So yeah, I mean, it's been a long journey, and I ended up, hiring a very famous psychic who's been a psychic for 40 years. She did cold cases, FBI with the FBI and CIA. And so I saw that I had an what is called an aha moment in her eyes. And one of that moment was when I went to the spa, and I ended up meeting a young girl that was there. And I picked up that she was going through a very hard time in her personal life. And then months later, my husband and I are going to Costa Rica. I ended up seeing her, and we had this conversation. And I asked her if she knew what a medium was, and she said no. And I explained to her. And then she says, well, maybe you can tell me about my cousin, and she was murdered. And I said, no, let me see if I can see anything. So what I ended up having this vision of, I'm hearing these very, very loud crickets. I'm seeing this lake, this tall grass, and I'm seeing the cousin, and she's with a gentleman. And so I come back and I tell her, she verifies that's where her cousin was murdered. And keep in mind, I've never met her. She doesn't know. That's what I pick up. And then that's when she says, I never knew what her last words were. And she said, my family has had a very difficult time with this. And I said, well, let me go back and see if I can pick up what her last words were.
Yeah.
Well, she had a confrontation with the gentleman that she was with, and she ends up telling him, you're never going to get away with this. And she, was what her last words. And that's when the killer ended up snapping and, obviously murdered her. And I came back and I told her that, and she just about, cried a lot. And I told her, please call me. Here's my number. I said, and I wasn't going to, charge them at all.
Yeah.
I wanted to help them, because sometimes people, when they lose a loved one like that, it leaves a lot of things unexplained. And so I can be that vessel for them, and actually talk to the spirit and relay any information that would be helpful. And, I can't actually say, completely heal the person, but just have some form of comfort in a sense.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's a big part of it too, because there's a lot of unanswered questions that people have, especially losing a loved one in situations like that individual that you're speaking of too. And I think it's so important that you have this beautiful gift to really relieve maybe some of those questions. Of course, it doesn't heal everything because they're not there physically, but it can just bring that comfort. And I think it's such a beautiful gift that you do have, and the natural ability that you've had. And I know other people have this ability in different capacities, but what advice do you have for someone who maybe is experiencing a similar spiritual experience, but unsure how to approach it?
I think the best way to describe it, when you work with your intuition, it's like a muscle, ever used. It takes, because one of the things that I taught myself, is not to repeat. Sometimes we tend to have mental chatter. It clouds our judgment. And when you have mental chatter, you tend to not hear your intuition. Your intuition is best described as, and this is how I explained it to my sister, because she didn't quite understand what the difference is with intuition, or making that distinction.
Right.
And I said, well, for example, let's say you're on the road and you go to the grocery store. You leave the grocery store and you're on your way home, and something hits you like a bolt of lightning. You forgot the milk. That's the way to describe, that you have to go back to the store. Well, that bolt of lightning is something that you don't think about. It just comes to you. It can come in forms. It can come in a feeling. It could come, like mentioned before, like a bolt of lightning.
Right.
And so it takes practice. Meditation is the number one key to all that. And in my case, I do spiritual baths. I try and do that 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. And I'm part Mayan. So we use what is called a holy stick. And when you use that holy stick, you do a cleansing starting from the top of your head all the way down and forming all around your body. What you're doing is you're giving yourself a cleansing. And what I do is I, pray. I mean, that's how I do that part. And, or I'll use sage. And I will throw Himalayan salt in my bath, because that is an absolute cleansing for, clearing on top of that. And I use an herb called rue. Rue helps with any type of negative energy or any type of haunting you, so to speak. Anything, it'll clear everything out. And so I meditate, that helps out, because it clears out. We get caught up in a lot of things that happen to us throughout the day or the week. And that's just, it's like you're cleaning slate, so to speak, when you do those things. And it helps because it clears it out. It's not something that you carry with you, and it's just a beautiful thing to do.
I believe that. And I appreciate you sharing that too. And as a medium spiritualist, how do you balance your spiritual practices with working with helping people too? Because how does that transform essentially with what you're experiencing spiritually and then going about your life too after? Like, what does that look like for you?
I separate it. I don't allow what happens. Let's say, for example, I get a bad day or I have a bad day. I try, it's very important not to allow it to interfere with the spiritual work. There has to be a distinction there. Spiritual work is very important because it takes a lot of, it does take energy, because you can, for example, I've actually done astrological travel, where I travel into exactly what happened at the spa. That's an example of an astral travel. I didn't quite understand that part of it, but that's what that is. It's because my abilities, my spiritual gifts stem from reincarnation. Miss Weber, the psychic that helped me through these 5 sessions that I had with her, and who interpreted all these experiences into the lessons that I needed to learn from, told me that. It's very important to do all these things to our spiritual body and physical mind. And she also gave some very important advice. She said, take care of yourself, because that's important for this work to actually work and help people. And so I took that to heart. And I was doing some things before she said that, and also eating a healthy diet. Because it takes a lot of energy, and it can take a toll on the physical body. So, and being physically active, going for walks. I have 2 pets here at home, and so so I will take one of them out. And my husband I was mentioning to you that my husband works with kids with disabilities, and he actually trained the other dog to pick up, when blood levels, sugar levels are high. So he takes the other dog, so to help with the therapy with the kids. And so, yeah, so and I never realized this, having a pet does change you. You become, it's almost like nothing else matters, except that loyalty, that love.
Yeah.
And of course, my husband's very loving then too. So we're a happy family.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
And, animals, they do give you that sense of just family and the loyalty. And I have a dog too. And it's just that connection piece you have with them, because you could be having a bad day and you just look at their little faces and you're like, okay.
And the thing of it is, here's another thing that would help your audience if they have similar gifts. I didn't realize this as a child. I would always touch the trunks of trees. Well, my Miss Weber, my psychic mentor, said, when you do that, she says, I don't think you realize what you were doing. You were actually picking up good energy from Earth. Yes. Which was amazing, because, and then I told my sister a similar story, and she said, I remember you used to hug trees a lot when you were small.
All for a full circle. That makes sense. And that's a way to look at it too. And just the work you're doing, but how we have to re-energize ourselves, but especially in the spiritual work too, because it's not something that you can see that's happening, like the energy that's being put out and the work you do as well. And I know you've written this book, and Validation of a Healer, how it explores your mystical experiences. Can you tell us more about the book?
What the book is about these are different experiences. These are premonitions through dreams where they were repetitive, and they just, they came out to be actual true occurrences within the family, for example. I also had these spiritual experiences, like I was mentioning on the spiritual attachment. And then I started my family. My mother ended up moving up here like maybe 15 years ago. The house was new. She started experiencing all sorts of hauntings. And my brother, who lived 2 houses down, experienced, which I mentioned earlier, my niece and my nephew, that was them, my brother and his family, they were experiencing some stuff. So to unravel all of that, my mother had no idea how to deal with all that. And I would visit her, and I started getting some, experiences, like a woman calling my name that I didn't know who it was. One night I was there, and I ended up going to bed, and then in the morning I felt somebody around my bed. So I stood up and I picked up that it was a woman, and she ends up going through the door, moving the door back and forth. I get up, I'm awake, okay? I get up and I'm looking through the crack of the door, and I'm trying to make sense of it all. So, my mother gets up the next morning and she says, I'm telling her, did you do this in the door? No, she said, I just wanted you to sleep longer, right? All of that started unraveling, and I, didn't quite understand it. And so through time, I ended up learning how to speak to them. And so I was recently, this is not in the book, but my mother was having all sorts of things going on. She was afraid to be by herself. She was by herself. And so my dad's, of course, deceased. And so I started working with an angel to try and help me. Apparently what I picked up was that there was a portal in the house. A portal means where spirits can come in and out, good or bad. And she was not sleeping. And I thought, there has to be resolution on this. So I ended up finding an angel that would help me seal that portal. And I didn't tell her I was going to do this. I wanted to see how this was going to work, because I'd never done this.
Yeah.
Ended up, the first night, I called her the next day and I had to sleep. And she says, I finally slept after so many weeks of not being able to sleep. They were making all sorts of ruckus, like they're dragging something in the ceiling. I mean, it's just conversations. She goes, I didn't hear anything. So then I continued working with the angel, right? And so after about maybe 3 or 4 days, I'm calling her just to kind of see how it's going. And so she's seen some improvement. And then after a week went by, that's when I finally told her what I did. The thing of it is that I sealed it from the inside. I forgot to seal it from all the way the perimeter of the house. Well, she was starting to hear things outside of the house.
Oh no.
I was like, oh my gosh, sorry, Mom. I'm like, okay, I'll go back and work with the angel so that you can. So it's been experiences like that where I'm trying something that I've never tried. It ended up working, which I'm really, really happy. So she's been fine ever since. And she seems like a totally different person, because a lot of times what happens, and people don't realize this, it can actually change a person. When you have these negative spirits around you, they're using your energy. They're taking a toll on that person, like they were with my mom. They're absorbing the person's energy by depression, by, just all sorts of things. And even her losing sleep. Because I had a similar situation too with the attachment that I was explaining to you.
Yeah.
They get their energy that way. So when I talked to her and I worked closely with the angel, I started obviously seeing some, and I told her that, I said, I'm seeing a big difference in you. She says, well, what do you mean? And she goes, you know what? I noticed that about myself, she said. Because every time I talked to her, it was very sad, very, gloomy, and she would reminisce things that would happen in the past. And now it's just very different now. That's how I knew. And I finally did tell her, by the way, what I did. Because I knew she would be concerned. I was like, no, I don't want anything happening to you. She gets overly concerned because she's seen a lot and she's known a lot of things that have happened to me, but I was prepared for that. Yeah. And so it was, thankfully, everything's fine now.
Well, it's just a testament to being able to help people in different capacities, but the portal itself, like understanding, well, you tried the first aspect and then you had to seal it in the whole house, and like little things that make a big difference. And I never even really thought of it, just like how that negative energy, and sometimes you might encounter somebody who has that negative energy, and it might be what's surrounding them, not really them per se, but it's just really piqued my interest of how that really can transpire, because I've always heard of, you have good spirits around you and those things, but I never really looked at it on the opposite side.
And the thing of it is, you just brought something to mind that I wanted to share with you. It's very important. One of the things that have happened to me in my past with, for example, you'll have people who will work with you in an office and you've got jealousy, you got hatred. Well, hatred is one of the strongest things anybody could have towards another person. It's almost, I consider that up there with witchcraft. Because it's a very strong energy. And I actually had 2 people, in a similar situation as that. And so I ended up doing a positive ritual on myself. And I didn't tell my husband this, but he started noticing a big difference, a good difference. I didn't realize that could actually happen. I wanted to share that with your readers because, I never realized that.
That's true. I mean, because you don't think about that. People hear things and experience things, but you're right. That aspect of hatred, it is very much a strong sensation. I've only maybe experienced that once or twice with individuals where I felt like because I feel like I'm an intuitive person to a degree. I don't practice or anything like that, but usually I can get a good read on people. Maybe it's a psychology background, but I think when I've experienced that, it's like my whole body is on standby of like, don't come near me. And that, like I said, I like most people. I never really have issues with anyone, but I've had very strong intuition of just stay away from that person. But
and it's just been, I never thought it could be like that. But it actually, and I did that for myself, and it just relieved me. That's how I knew it worked. And my husband noticed a big difference too.
Oh,
So which is a good thing.
yeah, absolutely. And I know you have this book, but will there be a book series?
There will be actually. I am planning to write a series, and what it's going to entail is my grandfather was Mayan, and he shared his mystical experiences of how his life was, and that I'm going to explore that further
Mhm.
and to enlighten him, and also to share his legacy with the world. And I'm really excited about that.
I'm excited to read it. I can't wait for other people to read it too. And just with all the work you have done and your journey of building your business, writing the book, what are some of the lessons that you've learned throughout this journey?
That it takes time, that expectations shouldn't always be there. Prepare yourself. When you write a book, you need to learn how to market it before you actually publish it. That's important.
Right.
Now, I ended up publishing it and then marketing it because I was very new to all that.
Mhm.
And I never knew what a book trailer was. It's been a learning experience. I had my niece do a book trailer, which is on my website, very beautiful. And those 3 rays of lights are on there. That's one of the reasons why I'm there. And starting a business is another aspect of things that I learned. And so the starting point with that is I just, did research for my state, what their criteria is, what I needed. And in our state here, you have to go to the Secretary of State. And so you have to also do research on the business to see if there's somebody else with a similar name, which, by the way, mine is Mayan Spirit, which is a unusual name. And so I worked through our CPA, through the tax information. You have to get a tax ID number. You can use your social, but I prefer a business number so that when I do a filing for my business, that would be in there. And most of all, pay close attention to how much money you're putting into the business, because they're interested in seeing all of those, profit and loss kind of information. And I went ahead and went through, instead of using our CPA, because he's already doing my husband's business and our personal stuff.
Yeah.
I ended up going through H&R Block. They will do that. And it's, they don't charge that much for it. And so, but yeah, and you gotta, look at the filings, because like in our state, you have to do what is called a quarterly filing. And so, and then for the IRS, I believe it's also every 4 months, 6 months, that you have to go through the IRS and report the filing, and they'll send you a letter. What I do is when they send me a letter and they know that something's due, I will go ahead and jot it down, make sure that I write. And number one, the key thing is go ahead and send your stuff notarized to the IRS, because you never know, things can get lost and you're trying to file something. I wanted to feel comfortable enough, just in case something for some reason gets lost, I still have that certification number.
Yeah, those are phenomenal experiences that you've had to be able to share with the listeners as well and viewers. But I think it's just having your ducks in a row of knowing, okay, you got to do business the right way. And there's things that are annoying to do, but we have to do in order to grow our business and make sure it's all set and all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, all those fun things.
Yes. But starting a website, I went through GoDaddy. So I had never used a website in my life, creating one, and it's been a nice challenge there.
Good way to put it.
Yes, had never done any. I didn't even know what a podcast was. So all of this was all new to me. I had to research all that. My mentor reached out to me and gave me some pointers and things like that. And she said, go to fairs, and that's what I'm planning to do. Go to a fair and maybe sell my books and do maybe a 15-minute reading or something. I'm not sure what, how I'll sign it out. But eventually I came in contact with somebody who plans it out here. They have speakers. So everybody who's a psychic, they all get together and, they do card readings. There's a variety of people who do different things. So I thought, well, maybe I can go ahead and sell my book at the psychic fair and maybe do, I don't know, a 15-minute reading or something for the book purchase or something. It's a thought. So I have to plan all that out. And I know that they were charging just $50 for the day. And they give you like 2 chairs. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to also do. I'm planning to do all that as well.
Perfect. I love that. And it just kind of gets in different markets, different people to experience and also see you in person and
Yeah,
experience the reading or whatever you choose to do as well. But it's just getting out there and marketing what works best for each person too, because I think it's the more people know about it, the better. And I'm curious, what are some of the tools that you've used with writing your book, but also just creating your business as well, that would be helpful for somebody else that's starting on this journey?
Well, the challenging part in writing the book itself is starting from the beginning.
Yeah.
What I did is when I was sitting down with my mentor, we were going through a series of all these events that had happened to me. I had to put them all in order as best as I could so that nothing was going to be a little bit out of order with when the reader, obviously would buy it. And so that was most important. And also what she interpreted is also in the book. I felt that including her in it and what she interpreted is important to relate to my readers, because I put in my interpretation. On top of that, she's put in her interpretation, which is really powerful. And I believe that my readers are going to benefit, in reading the book, because they're going to clearly see all sorts of experiences that have happened that, stem from that. But yeah, it's been a journey, and I'm excited. I really am excited about everything.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for you. And I feel like it's just going to help so many people too. And, we were talking about this prior to filming of just some people might not know they need the book because they haven't experienced something like that. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Until it actually happens to you, that's when you'll understand. You may have a relative who may be experiencing this, and the book may possibly help, or they can actually reach out to me. Yeah. The information is in the book as well, my business information. And it's, I don't wish that on anybody with what I've experienced. I really don't, because it takes a very strong person to do this work. And the takeaway for me is it prepared me to be the person that I am today. Yeah.
Well,
that's it.
Absolutely. And I think it's just the experiences shape us of who we become, who we're meant to be, and who we're supposed to help as well. And what would you say is the biggest takeaway from your whole journey that you can share with everybody listening right now of just your experiences, everything you've gone through, but why it's so important to be intuitive of what your experiences are, able to understand it, but then also do something about it as well?
I think it's very important to listen to your intuition. Everybody has it. And it's like how I mentioned earlier, it's like a muscle that you've never used. It could actually help you or save your life, like it did during the Christmas holidays for me, because I went to the grocery stores in the parking lot, and I had to stop and get a few things because I was going to make another dessert for Christmas. And I saw 2 vehicles on. Nobody was getting out. One car to my right. The other one looked like it was going to block my car. And I was noticing they're both on. Nobody's getting off. The one truck it looked like it was parked like towards the exit, but it was on. Yeah. And as I'm getting to my trunk, I opened the trunk. My intuition hit me. That bolt of lightning. Yeah. It told me I was in danger. That I needed to get out of there quickly. So I ended up throwing my groceries in the car. I'm shaken up. I'm driving home, and I told my husband, who's an intuitive, he says, they wanted your car. They were going to get your car. That's why it's very important to work on the intuition, because everybody has it. Yeah. It benefit you in every aspect. In that instance, I mean, I was very grateful that my intuition told me that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm so glad too.
And that's a takeaway from me.
Mhm. Yeah. Just letting that sink in for a second, because I think we have situations where we feel like we're in danger or something's off, or and trusting that. And I
Yes.
know I've had experiences, maybe not to that capacity, but where I'm like, I need to get out of the situation, or this doesn't feel safe, or something's off. I feel it in my bones. And I'm sure other people listening too. And I'm glad you
Yes.
said that, like, we all have intuitive aspects of us, and we can really tune into that and allowing that, so it could potentially save us or
Yeah.
allow a
Or
situation
love,
that's scary.
yes, loved one as well. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And what would you say is two top tips that you can give entrepreneurs that are on this journey that have been helpful for you in your process?
Number one, don't give up.
Mm.
It takes work to start a business.
Mhm.
And number two, marketing. That is the key, because people won't be aware of who you are or what you have to offer, what services.
Yeah.
And to me, those are essential. They really are. And talking to people, it takes a lot. Sometimes if you're not, a person's uncomfortable in talking to people, then it can be kind of a problem, especially if you're trying to open a business. I don't have any problems trying to talk to people. Actually, I've done free readings through the years, and so I actually relate to them, and it's just getting there and working.
Mhm.
I work full time in the day, and I also work on the weekends in trying to get my business going. Sometimes I'll work, different hours to get my business going, and so that's where I am right now. But I'm not going to give up, because I feel that what I have is very special, and that I can actually share it, with people and help them seek some kind of answer, whether it's a deceased loved one or a haunting.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're not giving up, and what you're able to do in helping people just feel a sense of comfort, or realizing what happened to a loved one, and removing hauntings or anything that a person is experiencing. But I do appreciate the fact that you said you're still working your 9 to 5. Also, you're able to build your business as it grows, and will continue to grow too. Because I think a lot of times in the entrepreneurial world, people are like, well, I got to jump in 2 feet and build my business, and don't realize too, like, the capital and the marketing and all the things that go into it. So I appreciate you sharing that, and your transparency. Well, your transparency this whole episode as well, but being able to understand too, there's no right or wrong way of doing things. It's trusting your process and how to get there, and just putting it out there. That's the biggest part, just doing it and never giving up.
Yeah, eventually I will be leaving my position to do this full time. I would love to also travel and do workshops for people and just talk to them.
Yeah.
And I would love to do that down the road.
Well, I think it's going to happen sooner than maybe you think. But thank you so much, Melissa. Where can people find your book, find you? We're going to link everything below, but if you could let us know too.
You can find it on Amazon, Validation of the Healer, What You Want, You Should Believe by Mayan Indian Spirit. And my name is Melissa Griffin. And so I also have a business, mayanspirit.org. And you can send me a message. You can, if you want to go ahead and look at that beautiful trailer. I just was in tears, and my niece helped me out with it. It just hit me right there in the gut, because I remember that day that I was with my mom, in the beach and stuff, and I saw those lights, 3 rays of light. So that's why I decided to go ahead, and I chose that. And so she went ahead and created it. It's beautiful.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Melissa,
Thank
for
you.
just sharing your vulnerability, your strength, and your beautiful gift with us. I so appreciate it. I'm sure everyone listening does as well. But make sure to like, subscribe, comment below. What was the biggest takeaway from Melissa today? I'm sure she would love to see that comment, and we'll see you on the next episode.